Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Why This Beer. I'm your host, Darren Benema, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Aslan Graves. Today, we're sitting down with Mitch Warner from Dageraad Brewing. Dageraad is a small brewery in Burnaby, BC, that specializes in Belgian-Style beers and has been a staple in the BC craft beer scene since 2014. While they're known for their Belgian ales, in the last few years, they've expanded their lineup to include more lagers and IPAs. In this episode, we'll dive into Mitch's journey from the film industry to brewing. We'll take a closer look at Dageraad Blonde and chat about the intricacies of bottle conditioning. We'll also explore their innovative use of yeast in IPAs and dive into their lager program, from Dagerlaager to Dagvar. We'll wrap it up with some talk about industry challenges and why they're pivoting from bottles to cans. So, without further ado, let's get into it with Mitch Warner at Dageraad Brewing. All right, welcome to Why This Beer, the podcast where we talk about everything beer and all the folks in BC that are making tasty suds. On today's episode, we have Mitch Warner, head of brewing operations at Dageraad Brewing in Burnaby, BC. Welcome, Mitch.
Hello.
Thanks for being on the pod.
Thanks for having me.
So first off, what's been your journey in brewing? What was your first exposure to beer and brewing beer, and what got you into the industry?
Oh man, I thought about this a lot. Like I don't remember if it was necessarily my first one, but my first like solid memory was probably Blue Buck. Yeah, probably like, right around when they got their first government listing, because I grew up in northern BC, so it would have been a government store that I was hitting up, and I remember seeing that like blue cardboard case and 6-pack bottles. I was like, yeah, let's check it out. Pretty excited.
Nice.
And then as far as a start, like I was pretty into craft beer, the limited options we had after I moved down to Vancouver for university, and I was working in film as a lighting technician, and I was working on like a really shitty job this one week. I was looking for entertainment, something to like fill the void, because I was working on like an Air Buddies film, and it was like I was on the puppies unit, so it was we were doing like a 15-hour day, and we were just shooting these puppies, and like the whole thing was just like, okay, we got to get shots of them like falling asleep, and so it was just like my boss was like, just go find something to read, and I'll just take care of this. You just need to be here, just as you do.
You weren't reading to the puppies to get them to fall asleep.
No, the puppies just needed to fall asleep. Yeah. And I came across a New Yorker article, a New Yorker issue. It was about food, and there was an article in it about brewing, and I was like captivated by it. And that was kind of like my the point of like the inflection point where I was like, oh, wow, you can just make your beer in your apartment. Like, let's do this.
Right. Was it on homebrewing, or was it like highlighting certain breweries?
It was an article about Sam Calgione from Dogfish Head, and he was talking about his time like as a home brewer growing up coming up in New York and brewing in his apartment. And it was just like a really interesting. It was like point counterpoint. So he was talking about his time in New York, and then counterpoint him running this massive operation in Delaware. And it was just that moment where I was like, wow, you can do this. And then it happened to be a guy on the crew that was a home brewer as well, so we just started talking, and then shortly thereafter I bought a home brew kit, and then I convinced my high school buddy. I was like, hey, do you want to come make beer with me?
Yeah.
And he was unemployed at the time. He's like, yeah, let's do this. And that's Liam Murphy, who Darren pretty well.
I know
head brewer and co-owner of Yellow Dog.
Yeah, I remember you guys. I hadn't met you before, and then Liam was like, "Yeah, we used to brew all the time," and I kind of was like, "Yeah, kind of like," but you really did. Like, you guys homebrewed a whole ton back in the day.
We brewed so much.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
What was the first brew? Do you remember?
Oh man, I think we fucked it up like badly because we didn't know what dextrose was, and we're like, oh, we got to bottle condition it, and we're like, what's this corn? Like we couldn't figure out where to get corn sugar, and we're like,
Right.
oh, we could probably just use corn syrup, and we bottle conditioned it with corn syrup, and it did not carbonate. And I remember bringing it to one of my bosses on a film set, and he was like looking at this, and like I think we had bottled it in like Corona bottles or something like that.
Yeah.
And he was just like, "What are you
What is
bringing
this?
me?" Like he had a sip, and he like put it aside. He's like, "I'm not drinking that."
Just really
Yeah.
driving home that like bad
Well,
home brewer stereotype, right? Like,
Yeah. Looks like you got a career in lighting.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right. Yeah, but it did get better from there. That was like definitely a low point, but we got better, and we bottle conditioned everything, and it was like, we realized early on that it was like bottle conditioning was going to take time. So we're like, well, we need to brew lots then because we want to have beer available all the time. So,
Yeah.
and luckily in my house at the time, I was living right on McGill near Slocan in East Van. And we had this like massive storage room, and it was heated, but it was kind of like cellar temp. And we just started filling it up with bottles. And I think at the height of it, we had like probably like 400 or 500 bottles in there of like.
Sweet.
Nice.
Sometimes we'd go down there and there'd be
good-
like bottles of like be blown up.
Blown
Like,
up,
oh
yeah.
man, what a mess. But
That
like all
terroir.
like Grolsch and
And
Grolsch bottles, which weren't great because green glass, but if you're making hoppy beers. But we had a couple like coveted brown Grolsch bottles, which were like pretty sweet.
wow.
Oh yeah. And then the house sound ones.
Yeah, we had house sound ones, and then my favorite were you could get them for a little while at the BCL. It was like a French beer called Fisher, and they came in like a 660 ml brown glass swing top, and those ones were awesome because it was like two portions. Like it wasn't like you're drinking a pint each every time you open a bottle.
Yeah, that's nice. What an expense if you think
we ended up selling them for a lot of money. Like I remember when we sold off all of our stuff, it was like, oh yeah, our swing tops are $1 a piece, and someone just came and bought like all of them. We're like, oh man, that's sweet.
What time is money, and
yeah,
it takes a lot of time to accumulate all those, right?
Yeah,
drink a lot of Grolsch.
Yeah, so much Grolsch.
So what kind of like sprung you from brewing, filling up your basement to kind of like the more professional brewery setting? How did you make that leap?
Yeah, it was a continuation through film actually. Like I was working on a TV show at the time, and one of my buddies, his girlfriend was she had a brewmaster certificate. She was like, a brewmaster. She went to school at Harriet Watt.
Okay.
In Scotland, and she was working over here, and he was like, "Oh, well, my girlfriend's a brewmaster. You should meet her. Like you should."
Yeah.
And I was stoked. I wanted to get some more knowledge, and I didn't really know anyone in the brewing industry. And so he introduced me to her, and she was working at Big River Brew Pub in Richmond.
Okay.
Which then became.
Is that
BRB, and then became
Monkey Nine? Yeah.
And then became closed.
Okay. Yeah.
But it had been open for probably close to 30 years by the time it closed. Like it was one of the early movers in the craft beer scene. Weird location, but
is that the one that's like sorry, is that the one that's like out at the end of like past the movie theater?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a bowling alley and brew pub. Yeah. And she was a head brewer there, and it was just kind of like a 1-person operation. And she had some vacation planned, and so she agreed to take me on, and I basically sacrificed money to working in the film industry to go work there for like minimum wage, cleaning tanks and like brewing. And I was like, this is I'm like, this is the sickest job ever. I love this.
But free beer.
Yeah, free beer.
Free beer.
So yeah, she taught me a ton. Claire Connolly, she's an amazing person. She taught me a ton, and kind of like gave me the confidence to do the things that I did at a homebrewing scale on a larger scale. She taught me the importance of cleanliness and like how to mash in, how to sparge, all this stuff on a bigger scale. And we're dealing with mostly slender conical tanks, but they also had these like really crazy tanks called Grundy tanks. I don't know if you guys have ever had the pleasure of using a Grundy tank, but it's a nightmare. It's got like 6 or 8 hex nuts on the outside, and you've got this floppy gasket. It's like nothing sanitary.
Yeah.
And you've got to like put this big metal plate on the front of this tank that looks like a little mini space shuttle or something. But yeah, hopefully never see them again. But yeah, I learned a lot, and then she ended up leaving that job, and they had kind of like, they're like, oh, well, maybe Mitch wants to be the head brewer here. I'm like, absolutely not. I was like, I do not have enough experience to do this. So I went, and plus they weren't paying me enough, and I was like, I'm just going to go back to brewing. And then I don't know if it was like a year later or so, Ben Coley, who is the founder of Dageraad, who I met in Chester Carey's serious beer course at Pacific Institute of Culinary Arts.
I did that too. That's funny.
Yeah, so many people did it. Like Liam did it, and then he was like, you got to take this, and I did it. The next one, ended up meeting Ben, and then about a year and a half after I met Ben, he basically offered me a job to come help him open Dageraad. I'm not to this day maybe not entirely sure why, but it worked out. Yeah. And I was kind of at the right point in my film career where I was like, I think I need to do something that's going to, make a change for the better in terms of quality of life. And, hours are long.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting a lot like personally out of it. It was just, lots of good money. But other than that,
what were some of the
crazy hours and days? I'm sure.
Yeah.
What were some of the big like hurdles in taking that step to like opening Dageraad? From like you said, you weren't ready at Big River.
Yeah, Big River. Oh, man,
what changed to make
ready for all the pressure at Big River? Those customers.
What made you ready at Dageraad?
I mean, like,
don't mess up our brown ale.
Don't mess up our brand.
Yeah.
I think it was like that lack of confidence was the biggest thing. Like we were good homebrewers, and we had pretty good palates. We all have shortcomings in our palates. But I think that between Ben and I, we had like a pretty comprehensive palate in terms of like what we knew tasted good for beer. But it was that confidence that I definitely felt like I was lacking. Like, and it wasn't until we had like a bit of success that it was like, okay, I feel like we know kind of what we're doing. And, we learned a lot that first year. It was rough.
Was it
just like, I remember our first force carbonated bottling run on the Maheen. It was a struggle.
That'll turn you into a man real quick.
Sorry?
That'll turn you from a boy to a man pretty quick.
Yeah.
There.
I remember like looking around, and there was like hundreds of low fills around me, and I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, hopefully this gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I've blocked out using the Maheen in my brewing career. There's one downstairs at Main Street. I'm like, man, one day that's gonna come back up, and I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Bottles are coming back, baby.
Remains to be seen, but we got.
I think we're slated for one more bottling run. Not little spoiler alert here.
Yeah.
One more bottling run, and then we're gonna probably put it to sleep for a little while at least.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll still do bottles, but it's definitely gonna go into storage for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think that run was like that was tough. That was a really big one for us. It's like, oh crap, what are we doing? Are we in over our heads? And then I think that things got easier after we made the decision to like it was a bit of a rush to get amber to market. That was our first beer that we put into bottles. And then after a couple batches, we were just like, we're bottle conditioning this. We're not going to do this again. And then we started bottle conditioning everything. And it was like, oh, this is so much easier. Turns out a Maheen is like a great machine if you're bottle conditioning. You're not keeping It's like, oh man, this thing's amazing.
Was a lot of that in because you're force carbing really high with the Maheen? Like you're trying to target?
Yeah, I mean, to like the specs that we could figure out with our Zomnagel, like shaking it, like how accurate is like, is that 2.6 or is that like 2.75 or like who knows?
Yeah.
And like always, you look back on things like that, and you're like, oh, what could we have done to like improve this? And it was like, what would have made a huge difference is with bottling carbonated beer is like cooling your bottles down, like leaving them in the cold room the night before.
Oh yeah.
And then like bringing them out cold, and then like that cold liquid's not hitting like warm glass, and it's like going nuts. But you learn that like way too late.
Way too late, yeah. Plus, you need a cold room. You can just throw bottles in. Yeah.
Yeah, you just got acres of cold storage. No big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did not have that.
Was it right off the get go, like from day one? The goal was Belgian beer.
Yeah. This was Ben's dream. Like he wanted. He spent a lot of time in Belgium. He's got a lot of really good friends in Belgium, and he loves Belgian beer. Loved Belgian beer, but felt like the stuff that you could get here was just not a true representation of what you could get in Belgium. Like, the hops have faded off. So a lot of people, I think, like you have like a Belgian Golden Strong or a Belgian Triple, and you're like, oh wow, it's like so like rich and sweet, and like it's got all that like floral alcohol, but it's like, but it's missing the hops that you would have in Belgium. And so, what we're trying to do is kind of bring that flavor to a local market so that you can have the Belgian experience fresh without importing it. That was the dream.
Yeah, I was always impressed, like right at the get-go, that you guys were bottle conditioning everything like that. I remember going to your tiny little tap room there, the mini tap room that you first opened up.
The micro
like literally was, I think, 4 seats.
There was 3 at the beginning, and then standing room for 4 to 20, depending on how much.
It was like it's like a coat, like it was like a coat room essentially, but it was like gorgeous. It was really nice. Yeah. But I remember that you couldn't get Belgian in a
Blonde,
the blonde in the growler or something like that.
You still cannot,
because it was just like, oh no, this is bottle conditioned. Like it wasn't kegged ever or something like that. And then.
Oh, it was kegged, but we were just like principled about it. We're just like, we'd rather not make money.
But I think I was impressed at the time of like, oh, like it was a stark decision to be like, oh, we want it to be like this, and like, oh, we're gonna bottle condition it. And if people don't know, like that are listening, like what bottle conditioning means is like you're doing a secondary fermentation. So you do your full fermentation, and then you do a secondary fermentation to carbonate the beer. So it takes an extra, I don't know how long.
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
So on top of that. And so I'm sure there's been times where you've been out of beer and go like, sure wish we didn't force, bottle condition it. Yeah. But I think that was always admirable to be like, oh yeah, this beer is going to take longer than most lagers to make, like from grain to glass essentially.
Yeah, totally. And I think that like if anything, over time we became more principled about it than less. Like we were just like, oh, like as things got busier, we're just like, oh, we're gonna start keg conditioning blonde now instead of force carboning it. And it was like, why are you doing this? And we're just like, well, it just tastes better. Like, we're just like, that's what we want. And it just tastes, Can you
explain some of the differences that you've seen, like between the keg condition versus force carb?
Yeah, it's tough. I haven't had the forced carb stuff in so long. It's tough to say, but it's just a little bit more nuanced and like it little smoother. There's some more delicate carbonation. But it's an interesting thing. We were talking about this today. Like we've keg and bottle and can conditioned a bunch of our different beers, and sometimes it works and it's like, oh my god, this is so much better, as with blonde. But we've done it with amber. Bottles are good, kegs not as good, and we've done it with white, actually worse. Like keg and bottle conditioned white was worse than forced carbonated white, and I'm not really 100% sure why. And then we started keg and can conditioning rainshine this past year, and it's like so much better. Like I'm like, why weren't we doing this from the beginning? It's so good.
Yeah.
And I don't understand what makes it better and like why certain beers are better and certain beers aren't, but we've always been kind of driven by our palates, so we just kind of follow that when we make our brewing decisions.
And within that process, are you going through like a full crash, finding your beer or filtering and then re-yeasting and re-sugaring?
We don't do a full crash, and that typically probably just comes down to superstition. Like you get stuck in your ways.
Yeah, it's not just an underserviced glycol system.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe this summer with all our lagers. I remember Blake had to like switch lagers off glycol because he was like, we're like at the limit.
That's it. Yeah.
But no, I think we just kind of like got to a point where like, well, everything's working really well. I don't really want to mess with it too much. So we usually chill down to about 8 degrees is like our max.
Okay.
I don't think it would make a difference if we chilled down to 1 degree, but like I'm also like, well, do I really want to sacrifice an entire batch of beer to find that out? But I'm sure it'd be fine.
And then
we sugar and then add yeast, and we used to use CBC1, but we now use EC 1118 for everything.
Okay.
For one, it's cheaper. Homebrewers out there like EC 1118, amazing bottle conditioning yeast,
acid tolerant,
THP uptake, like awesome. It's just like a robust yeast, and also higher ABV tolerance as well, which is one of the 3 reasons why we switched over to it.
Yeah,
it's great, and it only ferments. I think it can only ferment simple sugars. Like it can't,
right? Because you're not worried it's going to like over attenuate. Over attenuate your beers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's been great, and we like half the price. I hope. Who makes that again? Is that
Lalvin? Is it Lalvin?
Yeah. Hopefully, Lalaman's not listening to this right now.
Not Lalaman. Oh, because they do the other.
It's Lal.
Crank the price on.
I think it's Lalvin.
Yeah, Lalvin. Lalamond is CBC1.
Yeah.
Are they not the same company?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Lalvin? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe Lalvin's.
Sometimes they just like
the
have
wine
like
subset.
Wine side, and one is the beer side. Well, I'm gonna crack into the blonde here. Okay. I don't know if you guys have that kicking around.
I'll grab some. I'm just having a Dagvar right now, but
sorry.
I'll grab some. No, it's fine.
It's just that I was done my beer, and
I wasn't pre-gaming.
All this talking just gets you parched.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a tough job.
You've got a bottle that you picked up at a local shop.
Yeah, the Angry Otter up here.
Yeah. Do you find with the bottle conditioning, does that help improve shelf life and stability? Like, and obviously you were talking that you want fresh Belgian beer brewed here, but at the same time, I mean, even if something's sat on the shelf that you've made for a bit, it's probably not sat as long as something on a warehouse through the BC liquor import.
Yeah, it 100% improves shelf life. You got live yeast in the bottle. It's going to scour oxygen. It's going to reduce the oxidation right from the very beginning because it's active, it's fermenting, it's uptaking the residual O2 that you have in that package. We even to the point of when we started doing 750 ml bottles, we were worried about purging them, and then we went over to Four Winds and saw that they were running everything off of an 8-head Guy gravity filler, and they weren't purging any of their bottles. And we're just what? You guys are doing this and not purging your bottles? This is amazing.
Yeah.
And then they were like, well, I guess if they can do it, and all their beers that they make out of their 750 line, 500 ml line are all excellent, why can't we do that? So we bought a Guy. And I don't know how it works so well, but it works. So there we go.
I think if your beer is fresh too, and the yeast is all healthy, that really goes a long way.
Yeah.
I've only ever had problems if it's a super old beer, like a barrel-aged beer, and then it's old yeast, and then you're not purging your bottles. That's when you can have some THP issues for sure.
Yeah.
Carbonation issues, all that stuff.
So now I've got a blonde as well.
How's
Not
that?
maybe the appropriate glassware, but that's what I got.
It's okay. Prost.
But yeah, I would say it definitely improves the shelf life. That's. I'm not going to say that Dageraad wins awards solely because of packaging, but I think that we had a significant advantage because awards are basically a packaging competition. It's how good is your packaging stability? Because you can do as much as you can up until it leaves your brewery, and then who knows what they're doing with it, storing it by a furnace or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that bottle conditioned beer has a little bit of an advantage over top of coarse carbonated beer.
Yeah, it helps it keep fresh for longer, for sure.
Yeah.
That was kind of the Anchorage brewing model, wasn't it? Where they're
they force or they bottle condition?
Bottle conditioning everything because they're it's going for distribution.
Yeah.
Allagash too. That's another big, huge brewery that bottle conditions to this day, which I'm that is
even Deschutes. I guess I didn't realize this until
they
quite recently. It was maybe 2017 or something that they started bottle conditioning again, or maybe can conditioning now. But it was at the time it was bottle conditioning. But I guess they used to bottle condition everything, and you hear that Sierra Nevada does it as well. But it's sometimes it can be full condition, or it's a polished carb where you're bringing it up to 2.3 and then you condition to 2.65 with just to kind of keep it active and alive and make sure that you got that integrity. But I was oh sweet, Deschutes is bottle conditioning again, amazing. That's so cool.
Are you recirculating your tank the whole time through packaging? Are you?
We have a system. Go back to superstition. It's you build these systems in, and then you're just you're scared to change anything. But we our original system was kind of sketchy for infection points. We basically pour hot sugar syrup that we had mixed up through a funnel into the front of the tank, and then do the transfer onto the sugar to kind of mix it. Now we do everything through brinks. So we make our sugar mixture in a brink and then transfer it in while recircing. But we recirc for an hour every time.
Okay.
We probably don't need to do it for an hour. You could probably get away with 20 minutes, but do it for an hour. That's the Dageraad way.
Yeah.
And you're using dextrose or invert
we use
sugar?
Dextrose. We've talked about using fruit juice and other additives to
honey or something.
Yeah. I've heard honey can be a challenge for fermentation, but I think Garden Path uses that for all of their re-fermentation, so I think it's not impossible. It's just you get stuck
embrace
in
the varying bricks within the honey batches. I think.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You have to have a way of kind of dealing with it.
Well, like any good Belgian brewery, you have to have your very strict superstitions of how you do things.
Oh,
otherwise
totally.
it's all wrong. So
yeah, everything needs to be, all the dust needs to be swept to the west side of the building before we do any brewing.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
I heard like
it's in the
Blagi,
SOPs.
yeah. I heard Blagi just holds their yeast in like a 5-gallon carboy at room temp for like up to 2 weeks.
Perfect.
Then just dumps it in, and then it's like, grained a bottle in 6 to 7 days, and then
oh my God,
minimum 6 weeks in bottles before it goes out the door.
Oh man, amazing.
So,
it's so funny how like some of this stuff like defies logic, but you're just like, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Until someone can kind of make a strong enough case where you're like, yeah, we'll change that, I guess. You're right. This was a dumb idea.
If it works, it's not a dumb idea.
Yeah.
Tell us about this blonde. Like, what's the story behind it? It's been one of the mainstays for Dageraad from the get-go. And I know I was going to save it for when we had Ben on the show, because I know it's kind of his baby, but too bad.
You can talk about the other
You
beers.
can talk about it again.
Yeah, you can just talk about it ad nauseum.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think I don't know if we're a rarity, because there's lots of breweries that still have their flagship beers around, but we still have our 3 first beers that we ever made as like a kind of like our core lineup: Blonde, Amber, and then Bernabarian being the third one.
Oh.
Blonde is definitely Ben's baby. This is his beer. It was Blonde and Amber that the brewery was founded on, and then he came up with Bernabarian in the fall of 2014, I think. I think we were painting the tasting room, and he was like, we needed something that wasn't going to get us annihilated.
Yeah.
Like Blonde. Because it's like after work, you're just like, oh, you got an option between a 6% beer and a 7.5% beer. You're like, yeah, this is going to be a heavy day of painting. But yeah, Blonde was his baby, and he wanted to kind of like create a beer similar to like La Chouffe, like Belgian Ardennes forward. Ardennes is the yeast strain. It's what is it? 3722 or 3522? Yeah,
something like that.
If you just Google Belgian Ardennes yeast, you'll find it.
I think it's 3522. It's been a while.
I think so.
Yeah,
that sounds about
right. So like an amazing yeast strain, like doesn't mess around, just like gets the job done. Doesn't produce any diacetyl. Produces an absolute ton of acetaldehyde. So it takes a bit of time for that to kind of settle out, but if you've got patience, it'll get there, and it's like really pleasant, fruity, spicy yeast character. Blonde is brewed with, it says on the bottle, a secret blend of spices. That secret blend is orange peel.
Bitter or sweet?
I think it's sweet orange peel.
Yeah. Sweet orange peel, just like in the boil, like on Whirlpool or something like that. Yeah,
Whirlpool edition. And it's just it's gone through a little bit of change over time. Like we've changed the hops a little bit. We were originally using Hallertau Tradition, but we had some really bad harvests, and the Blonde was kind of like doing this like roller coaster of like, 1 year was like, wow, this is like the best blonde we've ever made. Then the next year, like, wow, it just like doesn't taste very good. And so we abandoned Tradition, and we've been using Hallertau Mittelfrüh, and it's been Mittelfrüh probably for the last like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And I like it. Like it's good. It's maybe a little drier than it used to be in the beginning of Dageraad, but it's kind of settled into where it is now.
You add sugar as well to bump it up. Yeah.
It's Weyermann Pilsner malt, wheat flakes, and a little bit of acidulated, and then dextrose and turbinado sugar.
Okay.
and then orange peel.
It's just that easy, folks.
That's it. That's it. That's all. What do you want from me? That's all there is.
I love how much sugar is like an ingredient in Belgian beers.
Yeah.
Everybody like views those things as like such a, I don't know, like a cheater, or like that's only for like American lager, or like you're like, oh no, pretty much every Belgian beer has like a bag of sugar.
Oh, the yeast, the Belgian yeast loves sugar. It's just like it gets more expressive, and you can pull a lot out of it with a little bit more sugar. Just like makes it happy.
Oh, are you guys using like a liquid yeast pitch for this at this point? Like,
yeah,
we'll
usually get a pitch like maybe three times a year, and we'll kind of run it through, because Ardennes runs through blonde, amber, Bernabarian, and our Antigone, which is our Belgian Golden Strong.
Nice.
So
and are you able to crop from all of those except for the Golden Strong?
We basically keep it to Bernabarian and amber, and usually there's enough production of those two that it kind of keeps everything moving. Nice. Blonde, if we get into a pinch, we will crop from blonde, but it'll usually be a dead end pitch. Like we'll use it once and then just like it won't continue.
That's it.
Just kind of emergency options, just because we stress it a little bit more than we would with the other two. So it's probably not in the best shape when it comes out of a blonde brew.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, what's kind of your yeast handling for Ardennes? Are you a big fan of fermenting warm or cold? Are you like looking at pitch counts to figure stuff out? Or are you just like stick your thumb in it and like stir it around? Or like what's the
look
what's
at it?
Yeah,
rub it between your fingers.
Yeah.
Get a feel for it. Yeah, that's more or less it. Like we're pretty low science in terms of pitching, in terms of yeast. Like it's you know, if it's fermenting well and it's the gens within kind of like the range that we like to use, then we kind of treat it as like, okay, it's healthy yeast. We'll pitch the same as we did the last time. We tend to underpitch. It helps keep you away from overly estery Belgian style beers. So we, you know, like the thing that we like in our Belgian beers is like a balance of ester and phenol. You know, nothing's too kind of out of whack. If you get too estery, it can get kind of cloyingly sweet, and if it gets too phenolic, it's gross. So you want that kind of balance, and I think that's been the biggest hurdle, is understanding, like learning how to manage the yeast. And we've really only dealt with, other than lager and IPA yeast strains recently, we've only dealt with 2 yeast strains in our brewery. We've had Ardennes and Chimay, and Ardennes took us a long time to kind of figure out, like, oh, what's our best fermentation temp and all this stuff. And some of that stuff we kind of figured out early on, and then other stuff, it was like kind of happy accidents, like glycol systems failing and beers fermenting at like 29 degrees. We're like, oh, this is actually really good. Okay, we're fermenting at 29 now.
So you're all about the free rise now.
Yeah. Well, we were always about free rise, but we never went to 29. And then like we had a batch of Bernabarian that was like, it free rose to like 29. We're like, oh, this is the best batch yet. Great. 29 is a new number.
So what are you casting out at?
We usually cast out at 20, and then we'll like each beer has its own kind of set point for free rise. Yeah. You know, depending on what we're trying to do with it. And then
control
also
the character,
like,
and then
and then like also like as you get into the stronger beers like Antigone, which is like 9%, you know, you start bringing that number down, because you don't want it to get like runaway hot or anything like that.
Yeah, create all those fusel alcohols and stuff like that. And
you want it to drink like a Bernabarian. But 9%.
Yeah. Do you have good stories of? I mean, this must happen often, where people come in and they order a blonde ale, and they're like, "Why do I feel like this now?" Or
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, I don't know if that. Like, I'm sure it happens on occasion.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've encountered that, but I remember that there was an account on Robson Street called Timber years ago. I think they closed like when we went into the pandemic. But they used to order 330s of blonde a week, and I was like, "Oh man, what
I
is
gotta go
going
see
on?"
this place.
I was like, "What is going on at this place?" And so I went down there and once with a buddy, and they were selling like 20-ounce pints of blonde for like $7, and I was like, "Holy smokes!" I remember we had like two of them, and we like stumbled out of there. We're like, "Okay, that's dangerous."
Yeah.
What is happening here?
No wonder.
Yeah,
Wow.
they had a good following for a while for sure.
Man,
Bet.
real philanthropists.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. It was
you
a different time. So cheap.
Yeah, those are like beers for $3 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's gone now.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a place I found pints for $3.95 recently.
There you go.
Momo Hut. I think go check it out.
Momo.
Yeah.
What is it? What kind of pints?
Red Truck IPA and
Decent.
lager for $3.95.
There you go.
Wow. There we go.
Yeah. And
Go.
amazing
Right.
Nepalese momos.
Sweet.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it definitely happens. I think that people, like, I remember early days of going to beer festivals and stuff like that. People were just like, "Oh, a blonde," and then they're just like, kind of like blown away at like, it's 7.5%. Like, what?
Yeah.
Well, you kind of alluded to it earlier with your talk about bringing on new yeast strains, but we'd be remiss to not talk about the lagers you've been doing, and then IPAs as well. What do you want to talk about first?
We've got the lager here.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk
Talk
lager,
about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lager right here.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So our lager journey started, I would say pre-pandemic, as like kind of a dream slash like, like, oh, maybe one day we could make a lager. And I remember making a pilot batch lager. We called it Thunderbird Pills with
Nice.
one of our old brewers, Mitch Schumann. And yeah, we were really stoked about it, but it was quite clear that we were never making lager. We didn't have a canning line. We weren't canning beer. We weren't going to like put it in bombers.
No.
And so it was like, whatever, shelve that idea. And then we got into the pandemic, and we had all this extra tank space, and Alex Nansen, that now works at Brassec, he was working with us at the time, and he was like, yeah, we should, maybe we should revisit that idea of making a lager. I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's make a lager.
Yeah.
Now's the time.
And we had tank space for
Yeah.
what
If
what
only
else
for
are
yourselves. Yeah.
we doing? Yeah. And so we made Dagerlaager. That was our first batch of Dagerlaager. And the name actually came from a joke that Ben on Twitter in 2016 was like joking around about something, and I was like, oh yeah, if we ever made a lager, we'd call it Dagerlaager. And so like, we kind of fell back on that. We're like, yeah, we should definitely call it Dagerlaager.
Just
So
rolls off the
Dagerlaager
tongue.
was born in 2020, and we were canning by then. We had our own canning line, and we learned a lot in that first year. Like, Alex had some lager chops coming from Four Winds, and I had asked Liam a bunch of questions about it. I talked to Conrad a bunch about how to make lagers, and I kind of knew what I wanted it to taste like, but I had no idea how to get it there. And
Right.
it was born out of like a lot of friends helping us along and like educating us, and like the beautiful thing about this industry is the sharing of knowledge, and we got it to a place where I thought it was a pretty good lager. It was like, oh, I'm stoked about this. Like,
Yeah.
From our humble Belgian roots to like, oh, we're making like a pretty nice lager, I thought. And then in the fall of 2020, we hired Blake, who Aslan from Main Street.
Came from Main Street over to you guys. Yeah,
that's
I
right.
had a probably 3-month crossover with him, 2.5. But yeah.
Yeah, Blake Menzies is amazing guy, and he had a good history of brewing lagers in New Brunswick for, what was the brewery again?
Grimshaw.
Grimross.
Grimross.
Yeah, Grimross. And they were known for making like really excellent lagers. And
he's got the Wireman.
He's got the
coveralls.
got
suspenders.
Wireman. He came with Wireman coveralls. You know what's up.
That's it. Don't even put a resume in.
Yeah,
Just show up in your Wireman coveralls.
Yeah. If you don't know, then
you don't know.
I'm not the right
I'm out
fit.
of here. If you don't know what's up, I'm out.
Yeah.
So Blake was like, very lager keen, and we already had like the taste of lager, and just like, we're doing this now.
You're in it to win it.
Yeah. So we made a second batch of Dagerlaager, and then he really wanted to make this beer that unfortunately you're not drinking, Darren, but we're both drinking, Dagvar, which is our Czech style pale lager. So like very hoppy, 3.8% Wireman, floor malted, Bohemian pills, a little bit of melanoidin malt in there because we cannot decoct beers on our system.
You're not going to decoct it? Yeah.
We can't even step mash, so like I'm not even going to mess around.
Yes. I mean, you could. You'll just take about 6 months of wear and tear off your pump seals.
Yeah.
But anyways, we made this beer, and it's been like a team favorite ever since. Like, it's just such a crispy boy, and like bitter in all the right ways. Like, it's like nicely bitter, but like not overpowering. And
yeah, it's got a nice bitterness that kind of like it dries the back of the palate, which just like makes you want to take another sip.
Yeah,
like as you're swallowing it, you're like, I've got like this most subtle bit of cottonmouth in a good way. I'm like, I need to wet my mouth again.
Yeah, I think more of this bitter beverage will help with that. But yeah, this is Blake's baby. Like, he loves this beer, and we brew it once a year, and it's always a sad time when we run out, but we got lots right now. So
what's the story of the guy fighting the bear? Is that what happens if you drink enough of these?
Well, it'd be pretty hard. I think this is
3.8%.
Like our lightest beverage offering.
Seems more like a fit for the blonde.
That's right. This is part of a selection of badges that were offered to us when we made Dagerlaager. So the Dagerlaager badge is like kind of like a classic crest with like a bear doing like this or something like that, and it looks very European. But they had offered a bunch of them, and this like bear and human in underpants wrestling was one of them, and we're just like, that needs to go on a can. Like, at some point,
use that. Like,
seems like an original Olympic sport or something.
Yeah, that's right. It's Russian Olympics. But it was actually like maybe somewhat of a motivator to like make more lagers. Like, we need to use that at some point. We got to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
And then that just became the thing for Dageraad, is like, we now have kind of bears or bear-like creatures on all of our lager cans.
Cool.
Doing different things. So like, I think Vienna Rad has a bear playing a violin. Hellerad has a bear reading a book. And then we have Tanuki, which isn't really a bear, but it's a raccoon dog hanging out with its giant testicles.
Yeah, to see it.
As they do.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know if I even answered any questions, but
that's right. That's a podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, but I will say,
in there's a tidbit of something.
Yeah. There's some juice in there.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd be remiss without saying is that Dageraad's lager program would not exist if it were not for Steamworks and their generosity. Brett and Julia are so kind, and they, whenever we want to make a batch of beer, we're just like, oh, hey, can we borrow some yeast? Yeah, we got this brink, can we have a little taste of yeast? And they're just amazing. And beyond that, they help us out with our some of our lab work if we ever need alkalization on beers and stuff like that. They're just like amazing neighbors to have, and just generally awesome people. So yeah,
awesome.
Little
it's always nice
plug there.
It's always nice to have like that community locally where like everybody has their strengths, and also, obviously somewhere like Steamworks has a lot of resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're just so kind to share.
Great community in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you haven't listened yet, go back to episode 2 of this podcast. You can listen to Julia talk about what they're doing there. And yeah.
They're doing so much cool stuff over there. Like, they're always up to something new.
Yeah. They're always riding the line of just new and cutting edge stuff, but then just keeping their cores just dialed in at the same time.
Totally.
Which is
Brett was telling me about their new fresh hop beer that's coming out, and I'm pretty excited to try it because I'm really glad I didn't have to make one this year.
We did make one, but only a single brew. We're not, we're not.
You're not pulling the cloudburst and doing like 16 different fresh hops over the next 2 weeks.
Or the yellow dog.
Yellow dog, yeah. Those days are glad. I loved doing them and drinking them, but it's a lot of work. People don't know how much work it is to make a fresh hop beer. It's insane amounts of work.
And like, you guys were fairly privileged in the sense that like your hops came to you, right? For the most part, like you guys weren't driving down to Yakima to pick them up.
No, we paid for them to come to us.
Exactly.
Put it that way.
So like I was down in Seattle on the weekend and visiting the folks at Bazaar Brewing, and they had just come back. Derek had just come back from Oregon, from Crosby Hop Farms. Spent like 5 hours driving back from Crosby Hop Farms. They got back to the brewery and then had to do all of the work.
We're mashing in now, boys.
Giddy up.
Yeah, I did that one year coming from Pemberton, and I remember just hitting traffic on the way back and just being like, oh, damn it.
And the hops are making you sleepy.
That's a thing. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
As they off gas, they'll make you sleepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a fun time. We're making one this year, just one.
That's good. That's very reasonable.
Perfect amount, very reasonable amount.
Yeah,
fresh hops.
That's so good.
Speaking of hops, for a Belgian brewery, you guys are also putting out IPAs now. It's kind of like everyone else's thing. What happened? What caused the fuss? And
well, I mean,
what was that?
It kind of started because people started making Belgian beers, and we're like, you know what? Off our turf, bro. Yeah. No, we resisted the urge to make IPA forever. That isn't to say that we hadn't done it before. Like we had.
I mean, Le Chouffe does a Belgian IPA.
I was just gonna say we made our blonde IPA that is a gold medal BCBA gold medal winning beer.
There you go.
2016 maybe. Might get the year wrong, but we have made some IPAs in the past, and but they were not kind of the straightforward, more or less North American style IPAs, and this is kind of our venture into that territory. And it started with doing Daybreak, which is our our full-time IPA, and it's a different beer because it's not very bitter, and it's very fruit forward, but a lot of that fruit is derived from thiol production. And as much as we can produce kind of thiol production in that beer. So we don't use any kettle hops at all in Daybreak.
Do you use mash hops though?
We do. We use mash hops. Oh yeah, thanks for asking.
hot side. What are your mash hops that you guys
We use
had?
Cascade.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Cascade.
Nice.
We wouldn't dare use such a beautiful hop as Sats. And
I know people tell me they put Sats in their
what are you
style
doing?
beer. I'm like, what are you doing?
Don't drive up the price of Sats. Jeez.
Yeah. After the
I
past
get
2
some
years
people
of
have
horrible
Sats kicking around, but just use Cascade. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
Cascade,
you.
and then we dry hop, but we don't do an aggressive dry hop on it. The idea being try to preserve as much thiol in the final beer as possible. I know you're going to lose it. You're going to lose a bunch during dry hop, but we try to find that balance.
Yeah. Well, there's a balance too of like, you're losing thiols, but you're gaining flavor by dry hopping, and there's an
100%.
expectation of like what a hoppy IPA should taste like too. As well,
and
I think personally.
Totally. And then our second project is our new slang project, which is, it's more of an exploration of like what can we do with IPAs. And so that's always been like, at first it began like we were just experimenting with different mash hops or like different dry hops. And now we've gone from that to like adding citrus zest into the bright tanks. We've done one that we did a blend of like we did a more traditional IPA brew. So we had no mash hops, bittering hops, whirlpool hops, and then dry hopped it. And then we did another one which was mash hops, no kettle hops, dry hopped it, and then we blended the two beers together, which was a lot of work, a lot of extra work. But
yeah,
but the idea being that like if you're going to try to maximize thiol in one, and then maximize like kind of like aroma and flavor in the other, and then blend them together, that might be a good way to do it, like as like a trial.
How did that work out? Because I had thought about that exact thing. I was like, if only you could just do that. But of course, like I
if only you just had like two empty tanks
kicking around. Not really.
It was honestly, it was like one of the best beers we made. Like it was so good. I was like, I didn't want this to be so good.
Don't tell me that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, be like, in theory.
In theory, yeah.
We did dry hop both of them though, because I was worried about hop creep. Like if we just like blended the other one in without dry hopping it, then you would get hop creep off the second one. So we dry hopped them both. But yeah, it was very good. It was probably one of my favorites that we did.
Are you guys using a thiol producing yeast like Cosmic Punch to do that?
We are using Cosmic Punch.
Okay. Nice.
It's we've only tried 2, maybe 3 of the thiol producers, and we really liked the first one we used, and but then when we tried and we tried Cosmic Punch just because we like ran out of the first one we had, and then we're like, oh, this one's actually really good. But some of the other ones that Omega has put out are a bit too intense for me. Like the flavors are just like so kind of sulfury that I'm like, I don't love the direction this is going.
Right.
Yeah, it can be pretty intense. Like when you have those beers off gassing, and you're like, is this gonna get better?
It does taste good.
Aslan has more experience on that. You've used a couple of those, I think. Aslan, like Helio Gazer and all those.
Those like super sulfury lager strains.
Yeah, Helio. Oh no, I haven't used like Lunar Party or any of those.
Oh, I thought Helio Gazer was a lager.
Helio Gazer is the like Cosmic Punch times 10 or whatever. Oh, and it's like too much of a good thing. I thought for at least our products, like we had some good seasonals that came out from it, but we were trying to use it in a core line.
Well, I think that like also these products can be thought of as like tools within a belt. Like you don't have to like 100% ferment them with that, but if you have that in, maybe in the mix with like a mixed firm or something like that, it could be really interesting. Like you could with Brett's and lacto could create some interesting flavors, but maybe not for me on its own. not what I'm after.
Yeah, they can be pretty intense. I always, when I talk about thiol beers, is that we figured out that, or actually we figured out, Omega basically figured out and created, I mean, you figure it out as you create this new yeast product to sell to people. I mean, clever of them to do that. But that we could make these really thiol induced beers, and we kind of forgot that, is this good? Do people want this, right?
How much
like,
thiol is good?
How much thiol do you want? I'm gonna give you so much thiol. It's like,
yeah.
Just because you can,
it's like
doesn't mean
it's
you
like
should.
the IBU race back in the
Yeah.
like the early aughts. It's like, how bitter can we make this beer?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the new slang series is like been really fun in terms of, we as a yeast driven brewery, like for the most part, like we're, most of our Belgian beers are just like, they're focused on the yeast strain and like, what can we get out of this yeast strain?
Yeah.
And so when we found out about these thiol driven yeast, we're like, this sounds like something we'd be after. Like, you're not just getting everything out of the hops. Like you can kind of find a way to kind of tool the yeast to your setup. And
the fermentation profile is what's going to give you so much of your flavor.
Yeah, exactly. And so that really appealed to us, and that was part of the reason why we chose to do that, and why the new slang series is kind of continuing that. And we're definitely talking about, and I think that we'd be dumb not to, but talking about like ways that we can incorporate the knowledge that we're getting out of these new slang beers into like our full-time IPA, and
Right.
and like, how can we improve it? Like how can we make, we don't want to alienate people that love Daybreak IPA by any means, but we want to make sure that like we're putting out the beer that best represents what we think a Dageraad IPA should be.
I think it's always great to use seasonals as a way to trial something that maybe you want to try in a core product down the road. You can use it as a proof of concept or like get an idea on it, and like it might not be exactly the way you use it, but you're like, you know what, that does kind of lean it into the direction we want.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we did that to a lesser degree, but we did that with Antigone, which is our Belgian Golden Strong. We put it out last fall, and we kind of had this idea for, like you can't really get Duvel anymore. And I think Ben had a Duvel, and he was just like, wow, Duvel's great. Like, oh, we should make a Golden Strong. That'd be great. And then we're like, we should put it in tall cans because everybody needs 9% beer in tall can.
I bought one. It was great.
But the whole idea was that we were going to can condition it. We wanted to can condition this Golden Strong so that we could kind of see if it would work for blonde. And the blonde that you showed in the can that you have, it was a trial to see if we could make a Belgian beer can conditioned that held up, and I feel like we did it with Antigone, and I haven't even had a can of blonde yet, so I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Mitch told me to wait a week before.
Yeah, Tuesday. You can have it on Tuesday.
I guess. Yeah, we're showing this on the video, but for those listening in their car, like maybe Mitch, you can talk about that. That you guys are canning blonde. You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, we haven't even told anyone. What? Yeah, we had a little release that we did kind of under the radar, where we released amber in the tasting room in cans, which was like, kind of a big deal. If you're a Dageraad fan.
Yeah.
If you're like one of 100 people.
Yeah.
That's a big Dageraad amber fan. No, but we released amber in cans a couple weeks ago, and we canned blonde I think the very next day, and it's coming out probably next week, I think. So blonde, still available in bottles, and probably well into 2025. We have a lot of them.
Tasting great.
Thank you. We were a little bit surprised about this transition, and I can talk a little bit about how it came about. You guys want?
Sure.
We had like a good supply of blonde in bottle, like conditioning, and then we got the news that Driftwood was canceling their Fat Tug Bomber listing with the LDB, and then we're like, oh crap. That basically means that the bomber, and luckily enough, we were using the exact same bomber mold that Driftwood is using. But yeah, that basically meant that like the bottle supply was going to dry up. So we got a message from our bottle supplier saying like, hey, by the way, we're probably not going to be carrying this bottle too much longer.
Yeah. Some other brewery, you probably never heard of them. Yeah, but they're not using these bottles.
So Ben and I were like, oh crap. All right, well, I guess we're doing this a little faster than we thought.
Right.
We kind of had like a roadmap of us getting into cans maybe mid next year, and then that got expedited to this fall. So that's what we're doing now.
There you go. So if you see it in the liquor store, got a four pack or singles or
4-pack fresh BCL listing.
Wow. There you go. BCLs.
Be in the BC liquor stores probably late September, early October.
Nice.
Perfect. That's probably when this is going to come out. So
perfect.
Some things all align.
You have to edit out all the nonsense.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens.
That's part of the charm,
Yeah.
I like it.
Yes. Circling in here to some more other topics. What excites you, Mitch, about the BC brewing industry these days? And do you think there's things that we can improve on, or we're like, first of all, like, what excites you? I guess
I'm like a lot of people say, you kind of like, you've been in the industry long enough, you do the full circle. You're back to like drinking lagers and like pale ales and stuff like that. Those things are good. I love that people are making more low ABV beers. Just like a testament to like a maturing audience, and be like, it's not all about just getting like wrecked on like 9% double IPAs. It's like, hey, like I actually just like the taste of beer. That's what I want to drink. Like I want to have a beverage. It's not water, and I want it to be tasty and bitter and not sweet. And so like I think the movement towards like lower ABV beers is really exciting. So props to everyone that's doing that. I'd love to see more saisons, but that comes with the customers wanting them as well, which I, as a saison producer, I understand that's a tough ask.
Yeah.
I think the collab we chose to call it a French pale ale.
Yeah, it's a good idea. We're releasing a collab with Establishment that we did when they were in town for Farmhouse Fest, and I think we're calling it a hype grist farmhouse IPA.
There you go.
It's not about the hops. It's about the
let's we'll see if there's a BJCP
hype grist category.
Hype grist. Yeah, there you go.
The from your perspective, where do you think the industry can improve?
Beer wise?
Or just in general,
whatever.
Like. Yeah.
I think
be a more meta question.
Beer wise, I don't know. Like I think that we're in really good shape as in terms of like beer production. Like we're all like across the board. I think BC is producing some like amazing beer. Shar and I have had the opportunity to go down to Seattle quite a bit recently because her aunt and uncle moved down there, and our trips down to Seattle have been great, getting exposure to the whole scene down there.
Yeah.
But I feel like BC is doing really well in comparison. Like not like in contrast, but like
no.
They're doing well. We're doing very well. Like we're just, a border apart, but I think that we don't get the recognition because I don't know, maybe people in the States just don't think of BC as a beer destination or something. I'm not 100% sure. Like, I know I've talked to Donnie from E9 about this a bunch, and he's always like blown away why people don't think about BC as like a great beer destination.
Yeah.
But especially with their dollar, like they should be coming up here spend
I know,
lots
right?
of cash.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seriously. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
blonde is basically 75% of
Yeah,
the cost.
There you go.
And then like I think the other thing is like, you know, we could continue the movement that we had going into the pandemic about being more inclusive. And I think that our industry, and I'm not saying that anybody's doing a bad job, or I'm not trying to call anybody out or anything like that. Like, but I think that we can all just, you know, continue to do that good work, try to become a more inclusive industry. And I think we are getting there, but you know, it just takes continual work.
It just takes time and work. Yeah.
Yeah, time and work, and you know, being open to hiring those people that, you know, maybe don't have as much experience, or you know, it can be easy to hire somebody that's already had a foot in the door, whereas you can hire somebody that like maybe hasn't got that opportunity yet. And I think that's really important to make those choices.
Yeah,
100%. And what takes up your time outside of brewing when you're not? Are you mushroom picking or
Ooh, yeah,
baking bread
in the fall? Wow, are you talking? What's going on here?
I got some inside sources.
yeah.
Talking to Liam. What's going on?
Where's the chanterelle honey hole by your?
Oh man, I wish I knew. Can we talk about that after the pod? Because I'd love to know.
We'll put a bookmark in it for sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to know where to pick chanterelles in the Lower Mainland. I've never done it, but I think we're talking about going mushroom picking, not this coming weekend, but or in 2 weekends if they're still out. Should be, but they're popping up on the island. So
I'm doing a bike trip next week in the North Island, and I'm like, it's gonna be hard to like crush out 100 kilometers a day if I see a couple chanterelles on the side of the road. I might stop for a few hours.
I'll catch up with you guys.
Yeah.
Put
Hit
those
me
in my
back
back.
on the way back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to do that. I like to read books. I play the odd video game. I generally just try to relieve as much stress as possible when I'm not at work.
Yeah.
And I used to be in film, so I like, you know, and that was a career path that I really saw myself in when I was in university, and so I'm an avid film watcher, and you know, I follow the film industry quite a bit as well. So kind of do all those things, and then, you know, whatever else to fill the gaps.
Very nice. I guess I wanted to add, sorry, maybe a new question for the end of the podcast is called Why This Beer?
Oh yeah.
So why should people drink Dageraad beer? Why not Red Truck IPA for $3.99?
I don't think it's like an either or. Like, I think it's just not. You know, I think it's you know, both at the same time, blended into one cup. No, I think that
why Anti-Goon over Duvel?
Because it's gonna be fresh. That's it. That's it. No, I think that going back to, I think that any beer that you're going to consume, you should be trying to consume it, you know, in some way as close to the source as possible, if that makes sense. Like, you know, and I don't mean like if you live in Mount Pleasant, don't drink Dageraad beer. I mean, like, you know, maybe just try to support your local breweries and like see what's out there and see what people are doing, and try to understand their philosophy and their story about what they're trying to achieve. And I think that it can be a bit challenging to maybe meet the people that are making the beer all the time, but that's why going to festivals can be rewarding, especially if it's something like Farmhouse Fest, where a lot of brewers will come and be active in the serving of the beer and be present in like partaking in the brewery or in the beer experience. Why drink Dageraad beer? Well, it's pretty good. I don't know. Some people think it's quite good, but I don't know. It's just, give it a try.
There you go.
What are you worried about?
Yeah. Well, it's like life's short. Drink good beer.
That's right.
Yeah, you can find Dageraad beer all over this province. I could find it here in Penticton. Get some Dageraad Blonde and whatever seasonal that you can find as well. Support Mitch and all the great work that they're doing there, all the tasty beer. And if you want to support us, tell people to listen to the show. Give it a like on Instagram. I don't know all those things, but
like,
subscribe.
and subscribe.
Like,
subscribe,
dab.
And
got a big
we'll get
sponsor coming in. Dageraad's gonna sponsor. No.
we'll take it. If you want to sponsor the show, shoot me an email, whythisbeer@gmail.com. And if you want to support us as well, you can buy neighborhood brewing beer as wherever you can find it, and Main Street beer as well. Support us as well. And until next time, this has been Why This Beer. So cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Take care.
Cheers.